My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Tunya speaking. I love you so very much. A huge amount of people are suffering on the planet. I am so very sorry about what you are going through. I have been more frequently joining meditation groups where we send love energy to Earth. These meditation groups have already been going on for a few years. However, I know that these meditations only help a bit and that your suffering continues. Hakan discussed that this current path is not the one that us galactics are preferring. In his message, Hakan, Build Alternate Structures. In it, he describes that the grey hats are moving more slowly than we expected or hoped. Some people are saying that all is going according to plan. Well, I disagree with the notion that this current scenario is either Source's preferred path or the preferred path of us galactics. We wouldn't have chosen a path that involves so much suffering. After all, the whole point of this ascension is that Earthlings have suffered more than enough already. If our preferred plan had come to pass, the grey hats would have already done public mass arrests and already provided public mass disclosure. Certain advanced technologies would already be available and your lives would be much better right now. I think it would be insulting to you if I were to sit up here and live my life of luxury, and tell Earthling lightworkers that yes, we plan for some of their loved ones to die, we plan for them to become alienated from almost everyone, we plan for some of them to become homeless, for children to suffer tremendously and for people to be in so much pain that they are sometimes taking their own lives. A significant number of lightworkers have already transitioned or died in Earthling words. Those lightworkers did not always have a soul contract to transition this early. There are spiritual messages out there that say that this is a wonderful time to be on Earth and everything is so beautiful. Yes, from one, zoomed-out perspective that is true. It is a special time to be on Earth, and you are attaining amazing soul growth. But from a more practical day-to-day perspective, people are suffering very much. Of course, I don't need to tell you that your suffering is real, you know the daily reality of living on Earth much better than I do. Still, there are various messages out there that imply or state that this is all a beautiful time, and while that's true from one perspective, it's a very agonizing time from another perspective. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Both perspectives have a certain amount of merit. It's not loving to say to a person in pain that they should enjoy the movie or enjoy the show or something like that. That doesn't honor the realness of their lived experiences. It doesn't honor the realness of their pain and loneliness. Furthermore, often the person saying those words isn't himself at risk of becoming homeless. It's always easy to say that someone else should carry their burden and endure their pain if we ourselves do not have to do so. A lot of lightworkers have been asking for more direct intervention by galactics. People like Hakan are regularly having meetings to discuss whether and to what extent physical interventions should be made. Regular galactic civilians are more frequently talking about that topic too and are sometimes invited to these discussions with our commanders and leaders. I have personally made public, telepathic speeches in favor of us galactics intervening physically on Earth. More and more galactics are starting to come around to the view that perhaps physical intervention might be necessary. That said, there are still very valid reasons for us not to intervene directly, such as the fear that if we do, the resulting Earth society might not be stable and might once again fall, like Atlantis did. Whereas if Earthlings free themselves, then we know that the resulting society will be stable. Hence a direct intervention on Earth's surface by galactics, such as a taking over of the mainstream media by galactics, remains quite unlikely in the near future. So the bad news is that no one is coming to save you in the short term. However, the good news is that lately, more and more people are realizing this and they are getting fed up with the lack of action by the grey hats and by the people in charge. Many people are no longer waiting to be rescued. We think this is a very good thing, both from a practical and an energetic perspective. Indeed, ultimately the solution to this current situation on Earth is for the people to take their power back. And a good number of people are doing just that right now. Fundamentally, Earth lightworkers are not the victims who are there to be rescued by us galactics. Instead, Earth lightworkers are the cavalry who saves the day. You are the ones you have been waiting for. Or to use a more modern-day metaphor, you are the special ops forces sent in to save the people, and we're the support. Some of the greatest souls of us galactics are physically incarnated on Earth right now. Some of them are listening to this very message. You lightworkers have all the answers you need inside you, and you are much stronger than you think you are. This sounds dramatic, but even just a small act of kindness, or some nice words, to someone else can have a huge positive impact. Improving your own life a bit, such as occasionally observing your thoughts and emotions as they come up, can also contribute hugely to the overall collective. You don't necessarily need to take on huge projects to have a positive impact. Although if you do take on a large project, you will find that things just happen to work out for you in all kinds of ways. The solution to this current situation is not to try and preach that one political side is correct and the other is wrong. For example, if we take the US, then neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are the solution to the situation you are in. Yes, from our point of view, one side is slightly preferable to the other. We are not saying that both sides are equally bad. However, criticizing people of the other political side isn't going to lead to a heart-centered society. Neither of the two parties are the solution. Very many people on Earth are completely fed up and know that society is rotten and are just waiting for a plausible alternative to come along. More people pointing out that society is rotten and more people demonstrating against governments isn't helping the situation that much, because people already know things are rotten, but most people need a plausible alternative before they feel like they can exit the system. The time is right for a heart-centered person to stand up, call the situation as it is, and present a plausible and realistic alternative way of structuring society. It is absolutely critical that this person does not engage in culture war issues and left versus right debates, not because those are not important, but because we think those things should be debated after we've structured society so that people have some room to breathe and relax. First, make sure that people don't feel every day like they are drowning. You will also find that many of the topics that are currently being debated fiercely will simply be solved or no longer relevant once Earthlings come together and build a heart-centered society. For example, once you are free from the dark controllers, you will experience a great material abundance, and then economic issues will no longer be as pressing or as divisive. You will also experience an opening and softening of the heart, and thus you will be able to come together to structure society in a love-centered and freedom-respecting way. The Occupy Wall Street movement united people from the left to the right. This is something they did very well. However, Occupy Wall Street failed because ultimately it asked the dark controllers to be nicer, and this is simply a strategy that is not ever going to succeed. No matter how many millions of people ask the dark controllers to be nicer, they will simply refuse. I feel like I have to stress and emphasize this point. Subconsciously, many light workers have the fantasy that if millions of people rise up and engage in peaceful protests, that the dark controllers would willingly give up their control. This is a beautiful fantasy, but it is ultimately a fantasy. This is not real and it is never going to happen. If every single person on Earth asked the dark controllers directly to get their freedom back, the dark controllers would still refuse. Ultimately, we think there are a few ways to resolve this situation. One is physically arresting the dark controllers. However, we do not suggest that average civilians try this, because very likely they will end up in a shooting match with police or soldiers or National Guard units. This is the action that good-hearted soldiers or good-hearted police should take, once they have convinced enough of their colleagues to join them. But this is not something we recommend to civilians. Now, what civilians can do is peacefully but persistently demand that soldiers and police officers honor their oath to protect either the people or the Constitution, depending on the country. Don't fight soldiers or police, don't threaten them, and don't block their way. We suggest remaining respectful. However, we suggest that you do demand that they honor their oath. For example, 100 people with Remember Your Oath signs outside of a police station or military base should send a message. Again, we do not suggest physically attacking police officers, blocking their way, making threats, or doing anything like that. Just peacefully yet persistently demand that they start either protecting the people or the Constitution. Because after all, they did swear an oath to protect either the people or the Constitution, depending on the country. Note that the goal is different here. You are not appealing to the government to treat you better, because they will not. You are appealing to police and soldiers to honor their oath to protect either the people or the Constitution, depending on the country. Let them decide what exactly that looks like. It is probably not a good idea to tell them what exactly they should do. If they ask, just point out general corruption and treason and politicians working against civilians in broad terms, and ask the police or soldiers what they think they should do. After all, they swore an oath to defend either you or the Constitution. Let them figure out how to fulfill that oath. It rarely works to tell people very specifically what you think they should do, after all. One way to call on police officers and soldiers to remember their oath is to sign the petition that is linked in the top YouTube comment. You can find it by scrolling down a bit. This petition is US-centric, but people can easily make similar petitions for their own countries. Aside from signing this petition, we think sharing it is also a good idea. If you feel called to do so, physically standing outside of police stations or military bases, and calling on those people to remember their oath, is one of the most effective things you can do. Even if you just do so for 1 hour, it is possible that you will shock police officers out of their current autopilot mode of existence. They might not immediately change their behavior, but you will have planted a seed. Moreover, the local news might pick up the story, and that might cause a ball to start rolling. If you are looking for a New Year's resolution, that might be a great one. Some lightworkers receiving this message might think that this will only work with a huge group of people, all with perfect signs and huge amounts of free time, and then proceed to not ever actually do this. Really, this could make a difference even if you do this just by yourself for an hour with a cardboard sign. Even if direct results are not achieved, it will plant a seed in the consciousness of the police or the soldiers seeing your sign. If the police or soldiers tell you to protest against the government instead, we suggest refusing, because the government simply is never going to listen to you. Keep your protests directed at soldiers and police, with one simple message: you swore an oath to protect the Constitution, in the US. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. That, by itself, can be your slogan, your rallying cry, and your hashtag. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. Just keep repeating that time and again. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. Remember your oath. To any police officers or soldiers receiving this message, yes, I know that many of you are hoping that civilians will demonstrate and then eventually leaders will decide to be nicer, so that you do not have to make difficult decisions yourself. However, this is simply a fantasy. The dark controllers are never going to be nicer, not even if every single civilian were to demonstrate against them. Part of why there are relatively few protests is not because civilians aren't awake or don't care. It's because they know that protests are not going to change things. And they are right. Many judges, too, are corrupt. In many countries, the courts will not solve this problem either. In many countries, things will continue to get worse until the police and the military finally start arresting everyone who is harming the Constitution or the people, even if those people are in high positions. Yes, I know this is a tough situation, but you took an oath. Please remember your oath. I will now address civilians once more. An alternative to the remember your oath approach is building alternative structures. Then once those structures are in place, you can exit the system, and if enough people do, the system will collapse. Practically speaking, those alternate structures can only be built if enough people come together, preferably physically. Someone in the comments section pointed out that certain lightworker projects have been stopped by governments. Yes, that is unfortunately true. However, every day the time becomes more and more ripe for projects like these to succeed. Moreover, even if these projects seem to get stopped by governments, the energetics that these lightworkers contribute to the Earthling collective subconscious is making a huge difference. Yes, even lightworker projects that seem to fail or get stopped are still contributing energetically to your freedom. I don't like sort of defending the current situation on Earth, but most of you are strong enough that you will be okay. You really are stronger than you think. Yes, some people will die, and that's a tragedy, and we don't agree with the current trajectory of the Grey Hats, but ultimately it's only the body that dies. The soul can rest, recuperate, and then choose a new life. Some lightworkers are also expressing doubt whether things will ever be okay. On that topic, I can be clear: yes, you will 100% certainly be free. One of the most critical factors that we look at is the average consciousness of Earthlings, and it is rising very rapidly. More and more people are waking up, both spiritually and as to what is going on in this world. I would like to thank you Lightworkers for your tremendous service, because you literally are pulling up the consciousness of all earthlings by your actions and also simply by your high consciousness presence. While the situation on your world might look more grim than a year ago, and while people might be feeling more hopeless than they did a year ago, the average consciousness on your planet has actually significantly increased in the last year. While people are feeling less happy and hopeful overall, more people are awake than a year ago. And the level of consciousness on your planet keeps rising quickly. Yes, you will be free one day, and one day we will be able to meet you, talk with you, hug you, sing and dance with you, make love to you and exchange stories with you. We have much to teach you but also much to learn from you, because you are much better at maintaining a good heart and moving forward in the face of darkness than many of us are. If we galactics conclude that physical intervention is the only way to free Earth, then that is what we will do. Source has decreed that this amount of suffering on Earth must end, and so it shall. That said, if people wait on us galactics, then likely your freedom will come at a later date than if people take action themselves. The point in time when we galactics will do a physical, large-scale intervention is probably further away than you would like. Still, you will be free one day. Us galactics are also very eager to meet our earthling brothers and sisters. Some of us galactics have our twin flames there physically incarnated on Earth, and we are very eager to meet them physically. And in one sense, the entire galaxy can't proceed with its integration and expansion until Earth is freed. We galactics will not abandon you. We will see this mission through to the end and you will be freed. That I promise you. And I also very much hope that at least a few lightworkers pick up this idea of protesting outside of military bases or police stations, inviting soldiers or police officers to remember their oath. I really think that has the potential to plant some very important seeds. I love you unconditionally and endlessly. Tunya.